Hey everyone, this is Coach Dave March, and we're here for another episode of the Growth Mindset Podcast. And so, as you know, we bring in a lot of innovative and visionary leaders, founders, CEOs. And if you don't know me, I'm your host here, um, author of the book Vision in Action, coach to many. And today we have a special guest. His name is Max. Max is the co-founder of Systematic, which is a very interesting technology in a field that is really not. I haven't heard anyone doing this before, so it's really going to be an exciting conversation. Max, why don't you introduce yourself to the people?
So thank you. Exciting to be here. So there's probably a bunch of things you could learn about me. I don't know which, if any, are super interesting, but I think for the purposes of today's conversation, I am the co-founder of a company called Systematic, and we are kind of trying to stop what I would call the technology shoeless cobbler problem of venture. That's a lot to say, but venture capital is famous for being innovative and well and deservedly so, and helping bring some of the transformative things in our lives from smartphones and their operating systems to various technologies that became social media or became digital payments or became online kind of anything. And in a time where software famously eats the world, venture capital firms do a lot to innovate in hardware and software and bring us some big sort of success stories, whether those are Amazon or Microsoft or other things like that, or Stripe in today's world, or Airbnb and Uber. And these are all recent sort of grads of the space, right? An odd thing, though, about social media and these things are they're everybody's life, right? They've changed everybody's life, probably. We could argue for the better or for the worse, but certainly changed their life. Um, but the number of people in the business of making these new technologies isn't that large. It's kind of a small business. It's not huge, but it's important because it builds the future. And what got me interested in it is I worked in this business for a long time, doing research and helping make decisions for big investors, often institutions, larger institutions. I sort of learned how this business worked, and I saw something interesting, which was building the future technologies is done with almost no technology. The people using aren't using the technologies they've helped the rest of us use, and they should. Why should they? Here's where my name comes from, Systematic, not my parents came up with. But Systematic, the name of the firm, and why we chose it is there isn't a very systematic way that we go about finding the men and the women who are going to build tomorrow in the form of building venture firms. And so we tend to go with the familiar, and venture capital tends to be kind of a social network that picks who gets to build their version of the future, one piece at a time. I'd love to see that open it up because I'd love to see that be more merit based than social network based. What does that mean? I aspire to a time in which what you're building determines your success, not who you know. But if a small number of people make the decisions about who gets funding and who gets prominence, and if they have to make those decisions without much insight, because this business is too hard to really get to know everyone, right? At any given moment, there might be 2,000 teams of people out there trying to build the replacement for LinkedIn or Facebook or Amazon. And maybe I'll meet 20 of them. Maybe I'll get to know 10, and maybe I'll decide which of the three that I get close to I'll invest in. But three out of a couple of thousand is a pretty low rate, less than a good bit less than 1%. And the reason for that is it's hard to find these startups. There's no place I can go to centralize them all that much. It's hard to get to know them. And because this business is a social network, getting to know people is not infinitely scalable, right? And so you pick among the people you know, because the other people you can't learn about, you don't bump into, and you can't find out about them, so you can't pick them. Kind of makes sense. Now, on the flip side of this, if you're building a company, you have to find someone who will invest in you at some point. And finding them is really hard because you only know the names of a few huge firms, probably who everyone else knows the name of too. And they probably don't even look at unsolicited inbound interest. So it's real hard. You're going to knock on a door until your hand hurts without that much prospect of seeing that door open. So what we thought is, what if we use the technology venture built for us, right? Which is all the scalability and artificial intelligence and database automation. What if we use that to solve this problem? And so we spent 3 years, initially a whole bunch of our money, later a tiny bit of some investors' money too, And we built a database of about 1 million rounds of venture, about the last 20 years in a bunch of places. And we said,
Wow.
what are norms? What are patterns that we can detect reliably and statistically? And we picked those out and we turned those into scores. How likely is this company to exit? Have someone buy it in most cases or go public in a few very exciting cases? So one. Two, how much money will the people who invested it think they could reasonably make? Will the company become a unicorn? So it's sort of a silly phrase, but the idea is to become a company that's really large and profitable company, over $1 billion in value. And then we also looked at what kind of corporate citizenship of the company. So do they have values that maybe you're comfortable with as an investor, or at least not afraid of? Yeah. So we looked at those scores. And now we track 350,000 companies with scores, and you can search them by any imaginable criteria. Where are they located? Where did they go to school? Did they do this before? How old are they? How many founders? Where did the people work before? What year were they founded in? What sector are they in? Who are their investors? All the things you'd want to know, but you can search hundreds or thousands of them at a time. So you can find investors, and we give you a single point on the horizon, those scores, to judge them by. So now you can find a lot more beyond your network, use your network, but add to it. If you don't have a network, you're not frozen out. Help build one. One, two, you have a similar score, right? And so I'll give you a mediocre example of this, but a good one. If you're looking at kids applying to a college or a university, you know their schools, but you might not have ever heard of them. Maybe you have some idea of their extracurriculars, but those are very subjective. They move from one place to another, right? What an A means in one school might be different from another. Okay. So the way you solve this problem, even though people hate it, is they take their SATs, take your scores. Because then I know that everybody applying to me sat in a room in exactly 4 hours, more or less, and sat in front of a computer and filled out a bunch of forms, basically, which were the test. And so that's universal. So, hey, this guy looks really smart, but no one's ever heard of his high school. I wonder if he's going to do well somewhere else. I can look at that SAT score and say, well, he did. He did really well on this score compared to other
Yeah.
people sitting somewhere else. So it's a mediocre thing, but it's a single point in the horizon. Our scores give you that. You can also press one button, ask the company to fill out a questionnaire, and then we suck that in, score it, and compare them to every other company you're looking at in less than 1 second, with 5 seconds or something, right? So all of a sudden, you can see further, and you can start to do what we all want you to do, which is pick the best vision of the future, not the one you know. And that's where we got our name, Systematic. Be systematic outside of your social network and what you look at in terms of investments if you're an investor, or who you can get to look at you if you're a startup, right? And that idea is just balloon the pool. And so that venture capital can jump and become even larger than it's ever been before because it can outgrow its social network roots, ironically, with the technologies it funded the development of.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. It really is. And yeah, the point of like standardizing it is a good idea too. Like kind of like standard. That's your standardized tests, in terms of
Mhm.
your SATs and such, so that we can
Exactly.
all kind of have a measurement there. That's really interesting. And I'd like the idea of what we were talking about before. Um, the idea of venture capitalists not being an industry, but really like a social media. I mean, yeah, not being
Social network.
an
Yeah.
industry, but yeah, I think that's really an interesting piece. No one really thinks about it like that.
Yeah.
To talk a little more about that, I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting.
So the example I'd give is a lot of people have ideas because it's so prominent, that Hollywood, the movie industry in America, and to some extent television as well, they're kind of an insider's game. You've probably even heard of this term "nepo baby," right? Where the idea is a lot of people in Hollywood today are in some part, talent and hard work, but also because of who they grew up around and with, who they're related to. Yeah. And that's been true and talked about pretty openly for 50 years. Okay, so venture's a little bit similar, but it's less who you're related to, but who you know. Okay, so a relatively smaller number of elite educational institutions, mostly in New York and San Francisco Bay Area, is where this began. New York, Boston, and San Francisco Bay Area, right? So the very early beginnings of venture were about picking someone too, right? So the very early beginnings of venture were about ships. It's where the business comes from. You'd pick a captain and a crew, and you'd back them to take a voyage and go somewhere, pick up some kind of cargo, sail back with it and sell it,
Mm.
hopefully for more money. But as you may or may not know, there were a lot of risks. Boats went down, captains got lost, crews decided they didn't like the captain and pushed him overboard. And also, a little bit less famous, but true statistically, a fair number of ships survived. They sailed somewhere, they bought something, they sailed somewhere else and sold it. And they decided that was really hard, and I'm going to keep this money, and I'm going to change my name, and I'm going to move to another town, right? Which
Yeah.
is not a great outcome if you are waiting for the profits of that voyage. Yeah. So it was always risky. It was always about people. These days, it's not about sailing far distances and bringing back
Yeah, it's more like an
treasure fish.
adventure capitalist than it's an adventure. It's more it's going on
Yeah,
an adventure
it
across the
sort of is.
sea.
It's
Yeah.
about figuring out whose vision of the future is a little bit closer to right? While people
Mm.
are trying to build things that they hope we need then and hopefully we need now and get there first and run a coherent business, all of which are tricky. So the team matters. Our argument has never been and should never be that the team doesn't matter. The argument is if I can automate and use AI to do all the basic tasks for you, you can actually have an ability to spend the time getting to know the humans. Because if you're also looking up their history, you're also looking up the history of that industry, you're also looking at where they worked before, you're also checking what other people are doing in that business, you're also getting to know them, you're also deciding longer than the time window you have, right? It's like, how well
Yeah.
would you do the SATs? You took them for 4 days? I don't know, probably pretty well. Wouldn't be fun 4 days. But the reason that they give you 4 hours is to sort of control the circumstance. Yeah, so what we're trying to do is automate all the non-human parts with
Mm.
AI, right? So like the best uses of artificial intelligence and database systems are to remove the drudgery, right? And let you do just the part that people do. We don't build things to make human judgments about other people. I'm not so sure technology is great at that, and we don't build those. But I build things to make sure that you have your time. I give you your time back to get to know the companies and get to help the companies because we track them, we do the bookkeeping, we go find them, we match them, and we also, by asking you a bunch of questions, we kind of help you figure out who you are. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this might be a tricky one, but if someone doesn't ask you a lot of somewhat uncomfortable questions about who you are, it's hard to learn who you are and make adjustments.
Yeah, yeah, and so on the topic of knowing who you are and knowing the business, knowing the founders, knowing the companies that a potential person investor is going to put into, there's statistics and economics around that. So was it like 90% of companies fail?
Mm.
So if you're speaking to 10 people, 9 out of 10 people are going to be are not going to be good on your investment. uh
Yeah, it's a high attrition rate. The truth is much weirder and worse than that in a way. So it depends on which 10 people you're talking to. It's quite likely that if you don't know well networked people, 10 of the 10 people you're talking to will fail. And if you know really well networked people, 6 or 7 of the 10 people will do okay. They won't be, Mark Zuckerberg, right? But they'll do okay. So
Mhm.
which pond you're fishing in does have a little to do with the size of the fish too, right?
For
And
sure.
so we also use statistics to find those. I'll give you some examples. We find things that are not the conventional wisdom of the business, just because it hasn't done data before. So female founders fail less than men, but their valuation grows much slower. And the reason
Hmm.
we believe is they're less aggressive in promoting their value
Hmm.
and they face discrimination, right? And so
Mhm.
they don't tend to use all the money and overpay themselves, which is a problem sometimes for others. But they have a hard time getting funding. So people don't usually think about that, but it's true. People not born in the United States tend to be more willing to work for lower salaries to get their dream to come true. So immigrant founders do tend to slightly outperform US born founders. Interesting. Not everyone knows it, but there are a lot of immigrant founders in this
Yeah.
business anyway. The other thing that's sort of a Silicon Valley tone that people think of is the lone founder, right? Man against the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the old joke of statistics is if you find any situation where it's man against the world, it's a safe bet to pick the world,
Yeah.
right?
I would agree.
World
Yeah,
does
I
pretty
mean,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, but one of the things is the sort of sole founder, the lone founder, and it actually is bad. So your chance of success goes up as you add more founders, all the way up to 4. So two
Huh.
is way better than one, three is better than two, and four is better than three or two. It does like vary a little bit by industry and stuff, but almost always there's a high positive correlation, like you're better off with more than one. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely interesting idea. And with the advent of AI and all these machine learning models and such, I think that the idea of single founders being successful is going to go up, because essentially that is what I think the future trend is, in a sense of you can have a successful company with less people because of the technology that is available to you.
Agreed. I don't think no people, I think fewer people. But I mean, so they used to tell us this thing all the time in the hedge fund industry, which used to sort of piss everyone off a little bit. But I think it was very true. And as you get older, you kind of realize how true it is. Like temperament matters more than talent,
Hmm.
right? So
Mm, yeah.
the problem with running a company in venture land, in my experience, is you need a pretty high EQ. And there's no AI for that. You need to know how to deal with other
Yeah.
people in tricky and stressful situations. Because starting and running a company is a lot about sort of putting your pride behind your success or being really proud and failing, which is not desirable. So putting your pride behind your success and getting along with other people who can be really difficult because you're also in stressful situations, and stressful situations don't bring out the best in people always. Sometimes some people, but not all the time.
Yeah.
So I do think fewer people. We already see that. I think you see with cloud. I think you see with AI. I think you see with automation, just old-fashioned automation.
Mhm.
You don't need as many people. Or this is the flip side that people tend not to mention. Each person can be much more productive, and
Mhm.
you can see that increased productivity. That's what we bring people with our systems. You can see that increased productivity to cut headcount, or you could simply do more, be bigger, do a better job,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are both possibilities. I do think total headcounts are being cut,
Yeah.
partially just because, I mean, the amount of code being written by AI is already probably like a third of the like basic code, and probably rising pretty fast from there. Different companies say different things. We haven't bumped into the limits all that much yet, for sure. So we don't know where this arc ends. But for sure, smaller headcounts are going to be pretty normal. But I also think one of the weird things that happens in startup land that no one tells you is, as you have automation and new tools, the expectations of what you need to deliver as a startup to be a seed or an A or a B, they also shoot up, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's lots of research in a very interesting area from history and sociology, some statistics, which is that there was always this thought as we invented vacuum cleaners and washing machines and dishwashers that people would spend a lot less time cleaning their houses.
Oh,
Now,
I love where this is going. Keep
yeah,
going.
and they didn't, right? So probably a little bit less,
Yeah.
right?
It's so
And they didn't
funny.
necessarily have huge staffs of servants, so perhaps there was some job loss. But what happened is people spend as much time cleaning up because the standard, the expectation of how clean your clothes are, how clean your house is, how clean your dishes are rises. So
Uh,
now you have a dishwasher, so you
okay.
can't have, a piece of last week's stew on the side of your cereal bowl or whatever it is, which is probably good health wise as well. You
Yeah.
can't have dusty everything. You can't have, whatever it is. So the standards move too, not just the capabilities. And so
Yeah.
my guess is you'll have substantial headcount reductions, especially in some areas, but you're also going to have higher expectations. But what people expect you to have done at the Series A, B, C at different moments in your evolution has risen quite a bit too. And so the idea is you got people do more of what only people can do, because most people are more fulfilled, also happier as employees or partners, if they get to do something that isn't super rote and mindless. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if a
Yeah.
machine can take 50,000 pieces of paper every day and punch holes in exactly at three places, that's probably not something that someone needs for their satisfaction and fulfillment. As long as you don't throw them out into the cold, which is obviously a big as long as. But yeah, in terms of that, we're really interested in robotics. I mean, robotics are coming too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted, that's what I want to I mean, I think what most people want, they want robotics and these type of things to do their laundry, to clean the house and I mean, that was like this is like Jetsons, this is like cartoons, this is like, that's
Sure.
what you would see. You would see that robot, cleaning lady in the Jetsons, that was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's already here. That's coming. If you look at Figure AI, and we've done a little bit of work with them and get to know them a little bit. I mean, they make some pretty amazing humanoid robots, and a whole bunch of other companies do too. Tesla has one on the market. Nvidia has one on the market. Now, there's a host. Electronics. There's several. Um, yeah, so AI starts, and we do build AI. That we are an AI company, and we build artificial intelligence systems to evaluate investors and startups and ideas and sectors and stuff like that. But AI actually started from robotics when it started 70 years ago, because the idea was if you have this artificial limb, artificial leg, artificial kind of
Mm,
human body capabilities for production, what intelligence moves this object, right?
mm,
And so you had to
yeah,
come up with an artificial intelligence, artificial command center, like the same way the brain uses a nervous system to tell your fingers to curl up into a fist or relax or pick up a spoon or whatever it is you're going to do. So a garment, whatever it is, you need an artificial intelligence to tell a mechanical arm to do those things. It does start there. What I'm excited about is if you look at how fast AI is developing, people have a tendency to forget this big thing, which makes this crop of humanoid robots coming now like a whole nother story. And so if you think about yourself, especially when you were learning really, really fast, say 0 to 5 years old, how much of what you learned in that period did you learn through text?
text.
Yeah, like
Not
not a
much.
ton.
It's
Some,
it's more
yeah,
tactile, not
right.
it's more touch.
And that's where the robots come in. They can touch, they can see, they can kind of sniff. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but they have sensors which pick up particles in the air. And if you want to know something that's a little bit gross and disheartening, but also scientifically true, all smell is actually particulate in the air. You're smelling small particles of something. Happier story when it's the candy store, maybe riskier story when it's the restroom, but it is tiny particulars, the particulate that you're smelling. And so machines can do that now. And they can map it into an artificial consciousness that can learn from it, that can walk around and learn. And actually kids learn from walking around, looking, smelling, seeing, touching things more than they learn from text, right? Especially in those
Definitely.
early years. And so when you combine artificial intelligence and humanoid robots together, which we're doing now, you get that 10x speed learning starting to come in because the robots can learn from
Yeah.
what they see, what they smell. And again, it's not identical to smell, not identical to seeing, but it's similar, and touch because there's lots of tactile stuff. And we've looked at interesting developments for diagnosis where you can talk to the robot, tell it a bunch of information. It knows your age, your weight, your height, your heart rate, and stuff like that. And then it has sensors in its hands, right? And it can have an idea of how hydrated you are, and skin temperature. It can basic diagnosis you'd get from a doctor. You can probably get now. It's pretty advanced, right?
Wow.
And so as they learn
Yeah.
that, they'll be able to pick the AI will develop really fast. Last interesting thing about robots that nobody thinks of, and not to scare you, but this is what we love, and we love researching this and putting that out there for everyone who works with us at Systematic. Um, the other thing that's kind of interesting is if I hire 5 robots today to work in my factory and it goes well, and I want to hire 25 more in 2 years, I load up their memory and all their experience on the first day. And after they've been at my shop for 1 hour, they all have 2 years of experience,
It's
right?
nuts.
That
It's
is
nuts.
fairly difficult to do that with people, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
what
Well,
internships and
I
stuff are
I think that
about, but
I think that the challenge I see, at least as I kind of look around, but this field is this idea of like, AI agents, and they're like, oh, look at our AI agents, and we're using these different names. So this is Lucy, this is Sophia, this is John, this is um, I don't know, whatever, different name, and they're trying to humanize it so much, but it's like, look, these are technology. We don't want to like. It's almost like it's a marketing thing, but it's almost like subconscious selling to it, and to a degree of like, oh, well, we're trying to humanize these robots and everything, and it's like, but like we need to make very clear like these are not humans. Like what these are not humans, and so we need to really separate that because it's getting murky or trying to like talk about it that way. I think. What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. So I think like when you're online, you're more observed than you are in a casino, and you're more manipulated than you are in a mental hospital. But people spend so much time online that they sort of suspend that self-awareness. One.
Yeah.
Two, if you don't help people understand where new technology fits, then you don't know where they end up fitting it in. And the risk here is that the artificial intelligence grows and the organic efficient intelligence shrinks, right? So at some point in a
Yep.
corporate environment, there may be a big impulse to hire the people who work best with their AI. And so you may become subservient to the machine at that point. And that's an evolutionary thing, right? And that I
Uh,
think that's the public sphere a little bit. It's a little bit of a
yeah.
fantasy of some of the bosses too, but like my guess is that we've already underwent this. So if you look right now, an algorithm, we build algorithms too, but an algorithm picks what you see on social media. So in your Facebook or your TikTok or your X or Snapchat or whatever your sort of pleasure is, Instagram. An algorithm may be picking your girlfriends and boyfriends and husbands and wives increasingly in the online dating world, right? An algorithm picks which is the next TV show you're most likely to watch on your Netflix or Disney Plus or again, whatever you use, Amazon.
Yeah.
An algorithm services the next item for you to buy at the store. An
Yeah,
algorithm, so
so
like
that's what I'm saying though. But so where's our choice? There's a is are we getting away from just the choice of just like I don't want the algorithm to
a choice is never
tell
in a
me what to
vacuum.
do. I want to decide on it based off of whatever I think is fit for me. Like
Oh, but you have more ability to do that. So here's the interesting thing. You have more ability to use a Perplexity or Claude or Chat GPT or Grok or
Mhm.
whatever your sort of utility choices, right? To learn
Mhm.
about and make informed decisions than ever before. And you're probably also making less of your own decisions. That's the sort of quandary of the moment. You are better equipped to make better decisions than anyone else who's probably generally walked the face of the earth, right? But you are making fewer and fewer of your decisions because watching you make decisions feeds the algorithms. And that's half the
Yeah.
reason that they give you things, right? So this is the sort of you know, I got myself in a little trouble. I was probably the first analyst of Facebook, or one of the first, at least in the East Coast. I got to know them pretty well. I liked the company, and did a lot of interviews around the company, and particularly around their IPO. And the crude analogy I made back then, I think might still be a little bit true, right? Social media in general is pretty powerful. People love it. They can stay connected. They can find their people. They can find their causes and sort of monitor where they used to live or their friends from high school or spy on their enemies from high school or whatever it is. So people do like it. Um, but on the one hand, it's kind of like a really clean, wonderful, free restroom, and people love it. But there's a camera in the toilet, and that's the trade.
Yeah. No one likes that camera in the toilet. No,
Well, it's usually not the selling point. It's usually more the
no one
clean
yeah.
bathroom. Yeah. So there's that. But having watched all this stuff for so long, replicating human decision making and forecasting it, it's actually pretty doable now. And if you look at it where it's cool, it's helping people negotiate filling out forms and applying for things and all kinds of work that wasn't fun, that took a lot of time and created a lot of anxiety. And that really is a huge benefit. On the maybe less good side, it makes it very easy to ensure fear in elections and public thoughts on various things, right? Because
Yeah.
we're separate from each other more. Markets are great because markets allow strangers to do business, but markets also make people into strangers,
Mhm.
right? So we're more alienated from each other probably than we used to be. And it's also hard for us to check the quality of the information we're getting. So you sort of have new capabilities, but there's also new risk. And like, to be honest, that's true of every generation of technology, right? And
Mm.
so what Systematic's trying to do is say, let's have a broader group of people based on their merit, not only their social network, come out here and help us guide us into a future that serves our needs and gives us the convenience we want, but does it in a way that preserves the things about our traditional societies that are meaningful to us, that make us who we are and make us feel human,
Yeah.
even when it's inconvenient and even when it's less profitable. And that can be a difficult trade-off to sustain.
Yeah. Well, look, I think we'll end the episode here. But this is a lot of information. A lot of people can, read this over. I wouldn't put this one on two times X when they're watching this one. There's a lot of information here, a lot of gems to really jump into. So, you've been dropping the name of the company throughout the episode here. If there's a best way to contact you, you
Yeah, right through
can,
the website,
yeah,
systematicventures.com. There's a contact us. If you have a startup, fill it out, you know,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. And if you want to
totally.
write to us and tell us that you got us through Coach Dave's podcast, I will cut the price by 50% for you. So I'll put out a coupon
Look at
for
that.
50% off for our friend Dave, in the hopes that we can have some other of our associates talk to him and we can talk to him again sometime.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Max. I
No
appreciate
problem.
you. And
Likewise.
thanks for jumping on. Yeah. We'll be signing off here on the Growth Mindset podcast. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.